We're back for Conk's Corner. I just thought I had to use that air horn right off the top. Seems very fitting. Hello, welcome to Conk's Corner. The last live of this week before we hit the weekend. Reading Harry Potter every single day for an hour. Never read it before. Don't know the books. Please no spoilers in the chat because I do read the chat. But Lois, who's in the chat, is moderating. Did you fix all the things, John Voth? Yes, we had some technical difficulties. I mean, to my knowledge, I did. As you saw last time, it just suddenly erupted in the middle. A lot of things went wrong, but I think I fixed it. And I added a little bit of this and that, so you might want to request some toilet time at some point during this stream. And if you don't know what toilet time is, if it's your first time, you'll see. You'll see what that means. I've been waiting for my unemployment to come since... Oh, something about unemployment. Does everything work tonight? I'm hoping it does. You know, this is all a process. I'm figuring it all out. There's a lot of different moving things, but I think it's going to go well. I'm excited. Today we're going to get into Umbridge. Umbridge, which we've seen a little bit of here and there. Very annoying, fun character, but annoying inner character, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say. Mark isn't here today. Where did he go? He had something with a friend, I think? Or maybe his girlfriend? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. But he's not here today, but you got the Dex cam. He decided to lie down there today. So there he is. He's just chilling out there. Okay. Where is my marker? There it is. The one thing that can't be fixed is John's English. Thank you, Snuffy. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Oh, that was quick and it was good. That's a pretty good scar. Actually, how about you rate my scars out of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. You know, give you some advice on better scars. We are way more important than that. Make him come back. Who's going to correct John's pronunciation? Probably you or Tasha. You know, you, Tasha, and Mark. You're the three correctors of my English. Okay, let's get this going, shall we? So we just left Trelawney's class, and they're heading to Umbridge's class, the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher class. And you know what? I was thinking today how, you remember the first time when I was reading the books and how I was like, what? There's ghosts? What? There's this happening? What? I'm actually now in the place like, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, different things happening. That makes sense. I'm not as surprised as I was at the very beginning, obviously, because it's the 5th book. But I was thinking back to where it all began. Back with my childhood. So let's get into this. I was just about to type I will. There you go, Tash. Yeah, 10 from me, Jenny Cope. Thank you very much, Jenny. John wrote The Matrix. Dumbledore's never wrong. John's thirsty. Whoa, those are 3 big statements there, Jen Collins. I'm in the world now, that's true. All right, glass of water. Let's get this reading started. Just gotta find my place here. Bins. Okay, here we go. They're entering the Dark Arts classroom. There you go, okay. When they entered the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, they found Professor Oh, now he's peacing out. Where you going now, buddy? Where are you gonna lie down? Back there? I'll catch up to him. When they entered the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, they found Professor Umbridge already seated at the teacher's desk, wearing the fluffy pink cardigan of the night before, and the black velvet bow on top of her head. Harry was again reminded forcibly of a large fly perched unwisely on the top of an even larger toad. The class was quiet as it entered the room. Professor Umbridge was, as yet, an unknown quantity, and nobody knew how strict a disciplinarian she was likely to be. "Well, good afternoon," she said, when finally the whole class had sat down. A few people mumbled, "Good afternoon," in reply. "Tut, tut," said Professor Umbridge. "That won't do now, will it? I should like you, please, to remember good afternoon, Professor Umbridge. One more time, please. Good afternoon, class." "Good afternoon, Professor Umbridge," they chanted back at her. "Oh, Phil's on. Phil Miguel." A few people muttered, "Good afternoon," "Good afternoon, Professor Umbridge," they chanted back at her.
"There now,"
said Professor Umbridge sweetly.
"that wasn't too difficult, was it? Wands away and quills out, please."
Many of the class exchanged gloomy looks. The order, "Wands away," had never yet been followed by a lesson they had found. Interesting. Harry shoved his wand back inside his bag and pulled out quill, ink, and parchment. Professor Umbridge opened her handbag, extracted her own wand, which was an unusually short one, and tapped the blackboard sharply with it. Words appeared on the board at once. Defense against the dark arts. A return to basic principles. Oh, she's trying to she's trying to brainwash them or relearn them. Videx, tune in the best possible moment.
"Well now, your teaching in this subject has been rather disrupted and fragmented, hasn't it?"
stated Professor Umbridge, turning to face the class with her hands clasped neatly in front of her.
"The constant changing of teachers, many of whom do not seem to have followed any ministry-approved curriculum, has unfortunately resulted in your being far below the standard we would expect to see in your owl year. You will be pleased to know, however, that these problems are now to be rectified. We will be following a carefully structured, theory-centered, ministry-approved course of defensive magic this year. Copy down the following, please."
Your Umbridge is great because I want to shut this off when you speak. She rapped the blackboard again. The first message vanished and was replaced by the course aims. 1. Understanding the principles underlying defensive magic. 2. Learning to recognize situations in which defensive magic can legally be used. I think that's a bit loud, hey? Again, still figuring it out. Just bear with me. I'm going to make it a bit quieter. There we go. Understand the principles underlying defensive magic. 2. Learning to recognize situations in which defensive magic can legally be used. And 3. Placing the use of defensive magic in a context for practical use. And I'm gone! No, I'm just helping out, putting where Dexter is. Hey, there he is. Looks kind of ghostly with that light. Yikes. For a couple of minutes, the room was full of the sound of scratching quills on parchment. When everyone had copied down Professor Umbridge's 3 course aims, she asked,
"Has everybody got a... Has everybody got a copy of Defensive Magical Theory by Wilbert Slinkard?"
There was a dull murmur of assent through the class. The way you smile when you do Umbridge makes me want to punch you. It's perfect for her. Is that just my smile? Umbridge's voice made me want to do a violent act, so it's perfect. Good, good. Dexter is the ghost of Voth House. There was a dull murmur of assent throughout the class.
"I think we will try that again,"
said Professor Umbridge.
"When I ask you a question, I should like you to reply, 'Yes, Professor Umbridge,' or 'No, Professor Umbridge.' So, has everyone got a copy of Defensive Magical Theory by Wilbert Slinkard?"
"Yes, Professor Umbridge," rang through the room.
"Good,"
said Professor Umbridge. I feel like she always does this a little bit. To the left.
"Good," said Professor Umbridge. "I should like you to turn to page 5 and read Chapter 1, Basics for Beginners. There will be no need to talk."
Oh, she's annoying. Professor Umbridge left the blackboard and settled herself in the chair behind the teacher's desk, observing them all closely with those pouchy toad's eyes. Harry turned to page 5 of his copy of Defensive Magical Theory and started to read. Yes, she's totally like Alexis from Schitt's Creek. Oh, I love Alexis. She's my favorite character on that show. You know why? Because, she's just as funny as everybody else, but she's the only character where I felt like some, good acting in terms of heart. You know what I mean? She can nail both sides, like the dramatic and the comedic. That's why I think she's the best character and actor on there. It was desperately dull, quite as bad as listening to Professor Binns. He felt his concentration sliding away from him. He had soon read the same line half a dozen times without taking in more than the first few words. I know that feeling. Anytime I read. Ha ha! Several silent minutes passed. Next to him, Ron was absent-mindedly turning his quill over and over in his fingers, staring at the same spot on the page. Harry looked right and received a surprise to shake him out of his torpor. Torpor? Hermione had not even opened her copy of Defensive Magical Theory. She was staring fixedly at Professor Umbridge with her hand in the air. How do wizards become professors? Are there wizard universities for PhDs? Good question, Nathan. Good question. Harry could not remember Hermione ever neglecting to read when instructed to, or indeed resisting the temptation to open any book that came under her nose. He looked at her inquiringly, but she merely shook her head slightly to indicate that she was not about to answer questions, and continued to stare at Professor Umbridge, who was looking just as resolutely in another direction. After several more minutes had passed, however, Harry was not the only one watching Hermione. The chapter they had been instructed to read was so tedious that more and more people were choosing to watch Hermione's mute attempt to catch Professor Umbridge's eye, rather than struggle on with basics for beginners. When more than half the class were staring at Hermione rather than at their books, Professor Umbridge seemed to decide that she could ignore the situation no longer.
Did you want to ask something about the chapter, dear?
She asked Hermione, as though she had only just noticed her.
Not about the chapter.
No, said Hermione.
Well, we're reading just now,
said Professor Umbridge, showing her small, pointed teeth.
If you have other queries, we can deal with them at the end of class.
So belittling. Especially with that voice, if that's really her voice. Oh, so belittling.
I've got a query about your course aims, said Hermione.
Professor Umbridge raised her eyebrows.
And your name is?
Hermione Granger, said Hermione.
Well, Miss Granger, I think the course aims are perfectly clear if you read them carefully,
said Professor Umbridge in a voice of determined sweetness. Well, I don't, said Hermione bluntly.
Ooh-wee! There's nothing written up there about using defensive spells.
But there was a short silence in which many members of the class turned their heads to frown at the 3 course aims still written on the blackboard.
Using defensive spells?
Professor Umbridge repeated with a little laugh.
Why, I can't imagine any situation arising in my classroom that would require you to use a defensive spell, Miss Granger. You surely aren't expected to be attacked during class.
Oh man, this character. We're not going to use magic, Ron exclaimed loudly.
Students raise their hands when they wish to speak in my class, Mr.
Weasley, said Ron, thrusting his hand into the air. Professor Umbridge, smiling still more widely, turned her back on him. Harry and Hermione immediately raised their hands too. Professor Umbridge's pouchy eyes lingered on Harry for a moment before she addressed Hermione.
Yes, Miss Granger. You wanted to ask something else.
Yes, said Hermione. Surely the whole point of defense against the dark arts is to practice defensive spells.
Are you a ministry-trained educational expert, Miss Granger?
Asked Professor Umbridge in her falsely sweet voice.
No, but... Well then, I'm afraid you are not qualified to decide what the whole point of any class is. Wizards much older and cleverer than you have devised our new program of study. You will be learning about defensive spells in a secure, risk-free way.
What use is that? Said Harry loudly. If we're going to be attacked, it won't be in a...
Hand, Mr. Potter!
said... said Professor Umbridge. Harry thrust his fist in the air. Again, Professor Umbridge promptly turned away from him, but now several other people had their hands up too.
And your name is?
Professor Umbridge said to Dean. What did I make him again? I completely forget. Dean is so forgettable. Oh man, what did I do for him? Was it Scottish as well? I think it was Scottish, right? He was Scottish. Yeah, he was Scottish. Might as well. She reads every book ever. Italian. All right.
Dean Thomas. Well, Mr. Thomas. Well, it's like Harry said, isn't it?
Said Dean.
If we are going to be attacked, it won't be risk-free.
Sorry to all Italians listening. It's so bad. I'm like, it's so bad.
I repeat,
said Professor Umbridge, smiling in a very irritating fashion at Dean.
Do you expect to be attacked during my classes?
No, but... Lois, can you moderate John? Italian lip listener here. Yep, so bad. Lorenzo, I am so sorry. That's like all I know of how to do the accent, and I can't even do it in a right way. If it, honestly, if that's offensive to you, tell me in there. If you're just enjoying it, tell me too. I have no idea. Tell me, Lorenzo, your thoughts. A listener with Italian last name right here says, keep going. Okay, cool. Just make Dean American or something, please. Sorry, Lorenzo, but this needs to happen. Well, okay, we got one Italian vote for 4. Let's see what else we got. Professor Umbridge talked over him.
I do not wish to criticize the way things have been run in this school,
she said, an unconvincing smile stretching her wide mouth.
But you have been exposed to some very irresponsible wizards in this class. Very irresponsible indeed. Not to mention...
She gave a nasty little laugh.
Extremely dangerous half-breeds.
What do we got? Not offensive, keep going. I'm noting what you're saying, though. Too thick for me. I enjoy, it gets me a little time because Italian family. Okay, cool.
If you mean Professor Lupin, piped Dean angrily, he was the best that we ever... Hand, Mr. Thomas! As I was saying, you have been introduced to spells that have been complex, inappropriate to your age group, and potentially lethal. You have been frightened into believing that you are likely to meet dark attacks every other day.
No, we haven't, Hermione said. We just...
Your hand is not up, Miss Granger.
Hermione put up her hand. Professor Umbridge turned away from her. She never gets... her anger comes through into her smile. Cast the rest of her with Muppets. Hermione put up her hand. Professor Umbridge turned away from her.
It is my understanding that my predecessor not only performed illegal curses in front of you, he actually performed them on you.
Well, he turned out to be a maniac, didn't he? Said Dean hotly. And mind you, we still learn the Lords. We still learn the Lords.
Your hand is not up, Mr. Thomas,
trilled Professor Umbridge.
Now, it is the view of the Ministry that the theoretical knowledge will be more than sufficient to get you through your examination, which, after all, is what school is all about. And your name is?
She added, staring at Parvati, whose hand had just shot up.
Bhavati Patil, and isn't there a practical bin in our defense against the dark arts, Owl? Aren't we supposed to show that we can actually do the counter curses and things?
Oh, these characters. I never want not to be Italian. Lupin a half-breed. Right, she just called Lupin a half-breed, Alicia. That's true. Yeah. This Umbridge is awesome. Thank you, Navneet. I think that Dean should be remembered as the guy who stood up for his defense against the dark arts professors. The good ones. True. Where were we?
As long as you have studied the theory hard enough, there is no reason why you should not be able to perform the spells under carefully controlled examination conditions,
said Professor Umbridge dismissively.
Without ever practicing them beforehand,
said Pavarti incredulously.
Are you telling us that the first time we'll get to do the spells will be during our exam? I repeat, as long as you have studied the theory hard enough.
And what good's theory going to be in the real world? Said Harry loudly, his fist in the air again. Professor Umbridge looked up.
This is school, Mr. Potter. Not the real world,
she said softly. So we're not supposed to be prepared for what's waiting for us out there?
There is nothing waiting out there, Mr. Potter.
Oh, yeah? Said Harry. His temper, which seemed to have been bubbling just beneath the surface, was reaching boiling point.
Who do you imagine wants to attack children like yourselves?
Inquired Professor Umbridge in a horribly honeyed voice. Let's think, said Harry in a mock thoughtful voice. Maybe Lord Voldemort? Ron gasped. Lavender Brown uttered a little scream. Neville slipped sideways off his stool. Professor Umbridge, however, did not flinch. She was staring at Harry with grimly satisfied expression on her face.
10 points from Gryffindor, Mr. Potter.
I take umbrage with Umbridge. The classroom was silent and still. Everyone was staring at either Umbridge or Harry.
Now, let me make a few things quite plain.
Professor Umbridge stood up and leaned towards them, her stubby-fingered hands splayed on her desk.
You have been told that a certain dark wizard has returned from the dead.
He wasn't dead, said Harry angrily. But yeah, he's returned.
Mr. Potter...
Wait, okay.
Mr. Potter, you have already lost your house 10 points. Do not make matters worse for yourself,
said Professor Umbridge in one breath without looking at him.
As I was saying, you have been informed that a certain dark wizard is at large once again. This is a lie.
It is not a lie, said Harry. I saw him. I fought him.
Detention, Mr. Potter,
said Professor Umbridge triumphantly.
Tomorrow evening, 5 o'clock, my office. I repeat, this is a lie. The Ministry of Magic guarantees that you are not in danger from any dark wizard. If you are still worried, by all means come and see me outside class hours. If someone is alarming you with fibs about reborn dark wizards, I would like to hear about it. I am here to help. I am your friend. And now you will kindly continue your reading. Page 5. Basics for Beginners.
Oh man, that was a lot. Professor Umbridge sat down behind her desk. Harry, however, stood up. Everyone was staring at him. Seamus looked half scared, half fascinated.
Harry, no!
Hermione whispered in a warning voice, tugging at his sleeve, but Harry jerked his arm out of her reach. So, according to you, Cedric Diggory dropped dead of his own accord, did he? Harry asked, his voice shaking. Oh man, Harry is taking a stand. I like it. There was a collective intake of breath from the class. For none of them, apart from Ron and Hermione, had ever heard Harry talk about what happened on the night Cedric had died. They stared avidly from Harry to Professor Umbridge, who had raised her eyes and was staring at him without a trace. Who had raised her eyes and was staring at him without a trace of a fake smile on her face. Okay, there's no... the smile's gone.
Cedric Diggory's death was a tragic accident,
she said coldly. It was murder, said Harry. He could feel himself shaking. He had hardly spoken to anyone about this, least of all 30 eagerly listening classmates. Voldemort killed him, and you know it. Professor Umbridge's face was quite blank. For a moment, Harry thought she was going to scream at him. Then she said, in her softest, most sweetly girlish voice,
"Come here, Mr. Potter, dear."
He kicked his chair aside, strode around Ron and Hermione, and up to the teacher's desk. He could feel the rest of the class holding its breath. He felt so angry, he did not care what happened next. Oh! I love it! I love it, Harry! He is just such a character in this book, and I love it. He's got the flawed sides of this angry character. Here is the good side coming out of that angry, sassy character. Oh, man. Professor Umbridge pulled a small roll of pink parchment out of her handbag, stretched it out on the desk, dipped her quill into a bottle of ink, and started scribbling, hunched over so that Harry could not see what she was writing. Nobody spoke. After a minute or so, she rolled up the parchment and tapped it with her wand. It sealed itself seamlessly so that he could not open it.
"Take this to Professor McGonagall, dear,"
said Professor Umbridge, holding out the note to him. He took it from her without saying a word, turned on his heel, and left the room, not even looking back at Ron and Hermione, slamming the classroom door shut behind him. He walked very fast along the corridor, the note to McGonagall clutched tight in his hand, and turning a corner, walked slap into Peeves, the poltergeist, a wide-mouthed little man floating on his back in midair, juggling several inkwells.
"Why, it's Potter, wee Potter!"
crackled Peeves, allowing two of the inkwells to fall to the ground, where they smashed and splattered the walls with ink. Harry jumped backwards, out of the way with a snarl. "Get out of it, Peeves!"
"Oh, Crackpot's feeling cranky,"
said Peeves, pursuing Harry along the corridor, leering as he zoomed along above him.
"What is it this time, my fine Potter friend? Hearing voices, seeing visions, speaking in..."
Peeves blew a gigantic raspberry.
"Tongues?" I love him. I love Peeves.
That was scary as hell. How about this one? Does this one... I got two ghost voices on here.
"We got this one, yeah. And then there's this one. That's also a ghost voice. So is it number 2 or number 1?
Which one do you like better for a ghost? Playing around, trying it out. What y'all like? What y'all like? What y'all like? Okay. "I said, leave me alone!" Harry shouted, running down the nearest flight of stairs, but Peeves merely slid down the banister on his back beside him. 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. 2, 2, number 1 is creepy AF. 2 has more conk factor. Okay, it seems like 2s are overwhelmingly winning, so I'm gonna do some 2. Oh, he's doing a little song! He's doing a little song! He's sliding down his back on the banister. Okay, here we go.
"Oh, most think he's barking, the Potter wee lad, but some are more kindly and think he's just sad. But Peeves, he knows better and say that he's mad."
Shut up! A door to his left flew open, and Professor McGonagall emerged from her office looking grim and slightly harassed. What on earth are you shouting about, Potter? She snapped, as Peeves cackled gleefully and zoomed out of sight. Why aren't you in class? I've been sent to see you, said Harry stiffly. I'm going to do some too. Did someone say toilet time? Hey, maybe somebody did say toilet time.
When you gotta go, it's toilet time. It's toilet time.
How do you like that? He held out the note from Professor Umbridge. Professor McGonagall took it from him, frowning, slid it open with a tap of her wand, stretched it out, and began to read. Her eyes zoomed from side to side behind their square spectacles as she read what Umbridge had written, and with each line, they became narrower. Come in here, Potter. He followed her inside her study. The door closed automatically behind him. That got creepy. He followed her inside her study. The door closed automatically behind him. Well, said Professor McGonagall, rounding on him. Is it true? True? Is what true? Harry asked, rather more aggressively than he had intended. Professor, he added in an attempt to sound more polite. Is it true that... there we go. Is it true that you shouted at Professor Umbridge? Yes, said Harry. You called her a liar. Yes. You told her, he who must not be named is back. Yes. Yes. Professor McGonagall sat down behind her desk, watching Harry closely. Then she said, Have a biscuit, Potter. Have... what? Have a biscuit. She's happy about it. She's happy. Maybe Professor McGonagall will finally tell what's going on, the situations with the teachers. I'm curious. I've been absent a few weeks. Boy, have things changed. They sure have, Reuben. Just so everyone knows, if you swear in your comments, they will automatically be held for review. Because we do have kids on the stream, we are not approving comments with swear words. Yeah. Bruno Mello. Iconic. My favorite McGonagall moment. Okay, so something's... the biscuit moment. Have a biscuit, she replied, impatiently indicating a tartan tin lying on top of one of the piles of papers on her desk. And sit down. There had been a previous occasion when Harry, expecting to be caned by Professor McGonagall, had instead been appointed by her to the Gryffindor Quidditch team. He sank into a chair opposite her and helped himself to a ginger newt, feeling just as confused and wrong-footed as he had done on that occasion. Professor McGonagall, I breathe away from the mic. Anybody know Chocolate Rain? That's so good. There had been, Professor McGonagall set down Professor Umbridge's note and looked very seriously at Harry. Potter, you need to be careful. Harry swallowed his mouthful of ginger newt and stared at her. Her tone of voice was not at all what he was used to. It was not brisk, crisp, and stern. It was low and anxious, and somehow much more human than usual. Misbehaviour in Dolores Umbridge's class will cost you much more than house points and a detention. What do you... Potter, use your common sense, snapped Professor McGonagall with an abrupt return to her usual manner. You know where she comes from. You must know to whom she is reporting. The bell rang for the end of class. Overhead and all around came the elephantine sounds of hundreds of students on the move. It says here she's given you detention every evening this week, starting tomorrow, Professor McGonagall said, looking down at Umbridge's note again. Every evening this week, Harry repeated, horrified. But, Professor, couldn't you... No, I couldn't, said Professor McGonagall flatly. But she is your teacher and has every right to give you detention. You will go to her room at 5 o'clock tomorrow for the first one. Just remember, tread carefully around Dolores Umbridge. But I was telling the truth, said Harry, outraged. Voldemort is back. You know he is. Professor Dumbledore knows he is. For heaven's sake, Potter, said Professor McGonagall, straightening her glasses angrily. She had winced horribly when he had used Voldemort's name. Do you really think
This is about... Do you really think this is about truth or lies? It's about keeping your head down and your temper under control. She stood up, nostrils wide and mouth very thin, and Harry stood up too. Have another biscuit, she said irritably, thrusting the tin at him. She's not good at expressing emotions. The 5 love languages, hers are gifts. And what you call actions, something. That other one. Those are hers. She's not good with words and expressing. The scar is flattening on the bottom. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Have another biscuit, she said irritably, thrusting the tin at him. No, thanks, said Harry coldly. Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. He took one. Oh, it's so good. I love this moment. It's so good. Thanks, he said grudgingly. Didn't you listen to Dolores Umbridge's speech at the start of term feast, Potter? Yeah, he said. Yeah. She said progress will be prohibited or... Well, it meant that the Ministry of Magic is trying to interfere at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall eyed him closely for a moment, then sniffed, walked around her desk, and held open the door for him. Well, I'm glad you listened to Hermione Granger at any rate, she said, pointing him out of her office. Oh, he's like, listen to Hermione. Hermione knows. Give her due, because Hermione is clever. She's wise. She knows everything. She's so maternal in her own way. Acts of service. Yeah, that's it. Acts of service. She's my favorite. My favorite too, Alicia. Yeah, she's pretty damn cool. That's the end of that chapter. Let me get some no, wrong one. Oh no. There we go.
John's voice is dry. He needs to moisten with some water.
You know the most expensive bottle of water in the world is $100,000? Look it up. It's ridiculous. Best chapter reading ever. Well, thanks, Esmeralda Joy. Appreciate that. Chapter 13, Detention with Dolores. Oh, we're getting some more of her. Okay. Dinner in the Great Hall that night was not a pleasant experience for Harry. The news... Oh, where did... Oh, it was Dex underneath. Okay, I thought he went away for a second. The news about his shouting match with Umbridge had traveled exceptionally fast even by Hogwarts standards. He heard whispers all around him as he sat eating between Ron and Hermione. The funny thing was that none of the whisperers seemed to mind him overhearing what they were saying about him. On the contrary, it was as though they were hoping he would get angry and start shouting again, so that they could hear his story firsthand. He says he saw Cedric Diggory murdered. He reckons he dueled with you-know-who. Oh, come off it. Who does he think he's kidding? Please. What I don't get, said Harry through clenched teeth, laying down his knife and fork, his hands were shaking too much to hold them steady, is why they all believed the story 2 months ago when Dumbledore told them. The thing is, Harry, I'm not sure they did, said Hermione grimly. Oh, let's get out of here. She slammed down her own knife and fork. Ron looked longingly at his half-finished apple pie, but followed suit. People staring at them all the way out of the hall. What do you mean? You're not sure they believe Dumbledore? Harry asked Hermione when they reached the first floor landing. Look, you don't understand what it was like after it happened, said Hermione quietly. You arrived back in the middle of the lawn, clutching Cedric's dead body. None of us saw what happened in the maze. We just had Dumbledore's word for it that you-know-who had come back and killed Cedric and fought you. Which is the truth, said Harry loudly. I know it is, Harry, so will you please stop biting my head off, said Hermione wearily. Oh, wearily. It's just that before the truth could sink in, everyone went home for the summer, where they spent 2 months reading about how you're a nutcase and Dumbledore's going senile. Rain pounded on the window panes as they strode along the empty corridors back to Gryffindor Tower. Harry felt as though his first day had lasted a week, but he still had a mountain of homework to do before bed. A dull, pounding pain was developing over his right eye. He glanced out of a rain-washed window at the dark grounds as they turned into the fat lady's corridor. There was still no light in Hagrid's cabin. Is that expensive water at least have bubbles? I think it does. Yeah. Yeah, the show is ridiculous, Tasha. That's the one with the water bottle. And Lois already supplied a link. Look at her. She's taking care of business, as always. As always, Lois. There's still no light in Hagrid's cabin. Bummer! I miss Hagrid. Mimbletonia, said Hermione, before the fat lady could ask. The portrait swung open to reveal the hole behind it, and the three of them scrambled through it. The common room was almost empty. Nearly everyone was still down at dinner. Crookshanks uncoiled himself from an armchair and trotted to meet them, purring loudly. And when Harry, Ron, and Hermione took their 3 favorite chairs at the fireside, he leapt lightly onto Hermione's lap and curled up there like a furry ginger cushion. Harry gazed into the flames, feeling drained and exhausted. How can Dumbledore have let this happen? Hermione cried suddenly, making Harry and Ron jump. Crookshanks leapt off of her, looking affronted. She pounded the arms of her chair in fury, so that bits of stuffing leaked out of the holes. How can he let that terrible woman teach us, and in our owl year too? Well, we've never had great defense against the dark arts teachers, have we? Said Harry. You know what it's like. Hagrid told us nobody wants the job. They say it's jinxed. Yes, but to employ someone who's actually refusing to let us do magic. What's Dumbledore playing at? And she's trying to get people to spy for her, said Ron darkly. Remember when she said she wanted us to come back and tell her if we hear anyone saying, you know who's back? Of course she's here to spy on us all, that's obvious. Why else would Fudge have wanted her to come? Snapped Hermione. Don't start arguing again, said Harry wearily, as Ron opened his mouth to retaliate. Can't we just... Let's just do that homework. Get it out of the way. They collected their school bags from a corner and returned to the chairs by the fire. People were coming back from dinner now. Harry kept his face averted from the portrait hole, but could still sense the stares he was attracting. Shall we do Snape stuff first? Said Ron, dipping his quill into his ink. The properties of Moonstone and its uses in potion making, he muttered, writing the words across the top of his parchment as he spoke them. There, he underlined the title, then looked up expectantly at Hermione. What are the properties of Moonstone and its uses in potion making? He's so helpless. But Hermione was not listening. She was squinting over into the far corner of the room, where Fred, George, and Lee Jordan were now sitting at the center of a knot of innocent-looking first-years, all of whom were chewing something that seemed to have come out of a large paper bag that Fred was holding. No, I'm sorry, they've gone too far, she said, standing up and looking positively furious. Come on, Ron. What? Said Ron, plainly playing for time. No, come on, Hermione. We can't tell them off for giving out sweets. You know perfectly well that those are bits of nosebleed nougat or puking pastilles or... Fainting Francies? Harry suggested quietly. One by one, as though hit over the head with an invisible mallet, the first years were slumping unconsciously in their seats. Some slid right onto the floor, others merely hanging over the arms of their chairs, their tongues lolling out. Most of the people watching were laughing. Hermione, however, squared her shoulders and marched directly over to where Fred and George now stood with clipboards, closely observing the unconscious first years. These guys are ruthless. Ron rose halfway out of his chair, hovered uncertainly for a moment or two, then muttered to Harry, "She's got it under control," before sinking as low in his chair as his lanky frame permitted. That's enough, Hermione said forcefully to Fred and George, both of whom looked up in mild surprise. Yeah, you're right, said George, nodding. This dosage looks strong enough, doesn't it? I told you this morning, you can't test your rubbish on students. We're paying them, said Fred indignantly.
I don't care. It could be dangerous.
Rubbish, said Fred. Lee. Oh, he's an Australian guy. Calm down, Hermione. They're it's all getting mixed up. Even like I grew up in Australia, I had an Australian accent, so I'm gonna talk like an Australian. Calm down, Hermione. They're fine, said Lee reassuringly as he walked from first year to first year, inserting purple sweets into their mouths. Yeah, look, they're coming around now, said George. A few of the first years were indeed stirring. Several looked so shocked to find themselves lying on the floor or dangling off chairs that Harry was sure Fred and George had not warned them what the sweets were going to do. Feel all right? Said George kindly to a small dark-haired girl lying at his feet.
I think so,
she said shakily. Excellent, said Fred happily. But the next second Hermione had snatched both his clipboard and the paper bag of fainting Frances from his hand.
It is not excellent!
Course it is. They're live, aren't they? Said Fred angrily.
You can't do this. What if you made one of them really ill?
We're not going to make them ill. We've already tested them all on ourselves. This is just to see if everyone reacts the same. If you don't stop doing it, I'm going to put us in detention, said Fred, and I'd like to see you try it voice. Make us write lines, said George, smirking. Onlookers all over the room were laughing. Hermione drew herself up to her full height. Her eyes were narrowed, and her bushy hair seemed to crackle with electricity. Here she goes. Here's Hermione. Here's the girl everybody loves. Watching you remember different accents is so cool. Thank you. Love the quick identity crisis to get to character for Lee. I was like, I confused him for Dean for a second. Okay. Hermione's going to unleash, probably.
No,
she said, her voice quivering with anger.
But I will write to your mother.
You wouldn't, said George, horrified, taking a step back from her. That is good. She's so clever.
Oh, yes, I would,
said Hermione grimly.
I can't stop you eating those stupid things yourselves, but you're not going to give them to the first years.
Ooh. Fred and George looked thunderstruck. It was clear that as far as they were concerned, Hermione's threat was way below the belt. With a last threatening look at them, she thrust Fred's clipboard and the bag of fancies back into his arms and stalked back to her chair by the fire. Nice. Ron was now so low in his seat that his nose was roughly level with his knees.
Thank you for your support, Ron,
Hermione said acidly. You handled it fine by yourself, Ron mumbled. Hermione stared down at her blank piece of parchment for a few seconds, then said edgily,
It's no good. I can't concentrate now. I'm going to bed.
She wrenched her bag open. Harry thought she was about to put her books away, but instead she pulled out two misshapen woolly objects, placed them carefully on a table by the fireplace, covered them with a few screwed up bits of parchment and a broken quill, and stood back to admire the effect. What in the name of Merlin are you doing? Said Ron, watching her as though fearful for her sanity.
The hats for house elves, she said briskly,
now stuffing her book back into her bag.
I did them over the summer. I'm a really slow knitter without magic, but now I'm back at school, I should be able to make lots more.
You're leaving out hats for the house elves, said Ron slowly. And you're covering them up with rubbish first?
Yes, said Hermione defiantly, swinging her bag onto her back.
That's not on, said Ron angrily.
You're trying to trick them into picking up the hats. You're setting them free when they might not want to be free. Of course they want to be free, said Hermione at once, though her face was turning pink. Don't you dare touch those hats, Ron.
She turned on her heel and left. Ron, they're fighting so much. Ron waited until she had disappeared through the door to the girls' dormitories, then cleared the rubbish off the woolly hats. They should at least see what they're picking up, he said firmly. Anyway, I agree. This situation, I agree with Ron. I do agree with him. Don't trick him out. Don't trick him into it. Yeah, Jenny, me too. I think that Ron's right. There's no point trying to finish this now. I can't do it without Hermione. I haven't got a clue what you're supposed to do with moonstones, have you? Harry shook his head, noticing as he did so that the ache in his right temple was getting worse. He thought of the long essay on giant wars, and the pain stabbed at him sharply, knowing perfectly well that when the morning came, he would regret not finishing his homework that night. He piled his books back into his bag. I'm going to bed too. He passed Seamus on the way to the door leading the dormitory, but did not look at him. Harry had a fleeting impression that Seamus had opened his mouth to speak, but he sped up and reached the soothing peace of the stone spiral staircase without having to endure any more provocation. She's not their master. She can't set them free anyway. It's not that neither of them have even considered opening a book. The following day dawned, just as leaden and rainy as the previous one. Hagrid was still absent from the staff table at breakfast. But on the plus side, no snake today, said Ron bracingly. Hermione yawned widely and poured herself some coffee. She looked mildly pleased about something, and when Ron asked her what she had to be so happy about, she simply said, "The hats have gone. Seems the house elves do want freedom after all." "I wouldn't bet on it," Ron told her cuttingly. They might not count as clothes. They didn't look anything like hats to me, more like woolly bladders. Woolly bladders. Hermione did not speak to him all morning. They're already like a squabbling couple. Already. Double Charms was succeeded by Double Transfiguration. Professor Flitwick and Professor McGonagall both spent the first 15 minutes of their lessons lecturing the class on the importance of owls. Oh yeah, Flitwick.
What you must remember,
said little Professor Flitwick squeakily, perched as ever on a pile of books so that he could see over the top of his desk,
is that these examinations may influence your future for many years to come. If you have not already given serious thought to your careers, now is the time to do so. And in the meantime, I'm afraid, we shall be working harder than ever to ensure that you will all do yourselves justice.
They then spent over an hour revising summoning charms, which, according to Professor Flitwick, were bound to come up in their owl, and he rounded off the lesson by setting them their largest ever amount of charms homework. Wow, they're really getting it this year, huh? If it's all the students too, could Hermione's plan work? The clothes thing is so unclear to begin with. Yeah, that's true. It was the same, if not worse, in Transfiguration.
You cannot pass an owl,
said Professor McGonagall grimly,
without serious application, practice, and study. I see no reason why everybody in this class should not achieve an owl in Transfiguration, as long as they put in the work.
Neville made a sad little disbelieving noise.
Yes, you too, Longbottom,
said Professor McGonagall.
There's nothing wrong with your work except lack of confidence. So, today we are starting vanishing spells. These are easier than conjuring spells, which you would not usually attempt until Newt level, but they are still among the most difficult magic you will be tested on in your owl.
Isn't that was, oh my gosh, I thought it was Trelawney. Damn, wrong voice. Yeah, I know. We need Mark, John. I know. Okay, I'm not gonna do it all. We got the information, and this is not a huge moment, so I'm not gonna do it again. She was quite right. Harry found the vanishing spells horribly difficult. By the end of a double period, neither he nor Ron had managed to vanish the snails on which they were practicing. Though Ron said hopefully he thought his looked a bit paler, Hermione, on the other hand, successfully vanished her snail on the third attempt, earning her a 10-point bonus for Gryffindor from Professor McGonagall. She was the only one not given homework. Everybody else was told to practice the spell overnight, ready for a fresh attempt on their snails the following afternoon. That's so embarrassing for you, John. Nah, not really. 'Cause my life is a bomb! Now panicking slightly about the amount of homework they had to do, Harry and Ron spent their lunch hour in the library, looking up the uses of moonstones and potion making. Still angry about Ron's slur on her woolly hats, Hermione did not join them. By the time they reached care of magical creatures in the afternoon, Harry's head was aching again. The day had become cool and breezy, and as they walked down the sloping lawn towards Harry's cabin on the edge of the Forbidden Forest, they felt the occasional drop of rain on their faces. Professor Grubblyplank stood waiting for the class some 10 yards from Hagrid's front door, a long trestle table in front of her laden with twigs. As Harry and Ron reached her, a loud shout of laughter sounded behind them. Turning, who else? They saw Draco Malfoy striding towards them, surrounded by his usual gang of Slytherin cronies. He had clearly just said something highly amusing, because Crabbe, Goyelle, Pansy Parkinson, and the rest continued to snigger heartily as they gathered around the trestle table, and judging by the way that they all kept looking over at Harry, he was able to guess the subject of the joke without much difficulty. If he was worried about being embarrassed, he wouldn't be doing silly voices live on YouTube. That's true. That's very true, Snuffy. John, you lost 40 listeners with that Trelawney bit. Okay. What time is it? Oh, okay. We're getting up to an hour here. So actually, that seems like a good moment to end. Let's have some question and answer sessions. I like this character of Umbridge because, hey, buddy, how you doing? Let me grab some Dexter. Let me grab some Dexter. That sounds wrong. Let me grab Dexter and bring him over here. Here you are, buddy. Woo-wee. Say hello to the masses. He's already winking his hand. Hey, buddy. Yeah, I like how sickly sweet she is, and her anger comes through in her sweetness. Those are always interesting characters to read. You were over 100 for a moment, but once you started, you just began hemorrhaging him. Hemorrhaging? Yeah. No, I take it back. You can say whatever you want. This is a bomb. Okay, why do you like Umbridge? Explain yourself. Because she's fun. Obviously you don't like her character. She's annoying, but she's interesting. I love interesting characters. You know? Characters who don't act like you expect them to. Like that sickly sweetness. There's not a lot of evil characters. I'm assuming she's evil. I was not at the beginning. What will the detention be like? Right. I think she's gonna do... If you've seen the movie The Master... Oh wait, here we go. One second.
Premonition, idiot. It's time for John's premonition.
It's gonna be like in the movie The Master, when Philip Seymour Hoffman is conditioning him. She's gonna try and condition him with a back and forth answer thing. She's going to just strip it down, just him and her in a classroom, and she's gonna try brainwashing him and trying to get him that way. That's what I think. No, you don't. You don't have to be a patron for the Discord at all. No, I just haven't set it up yet. I'm just doing the configuration, and I'll post it, and you'll have a link for it on Monday. So you don't have to be on Patreon for that. Just gonna silence the lamb on Harry, put the lotion on the skin. What kind of evil do you think she is? Like in league with Voldemort, or up? Or up? Does she have her own agenda? I think she's in league with Voldemort. You know, I think she's in a very high league of Voldemort. I think she's the, you know how they have people, she's like their 007 in terms of, I guess, manipulation. You know, I think she's really, really high up there. What do you think it will be like when Umbridge ties up Harry? Nathan. I just should look at, as people say, I should look at the names first. No question, but today is the first time I watched your streams live due to time zone difference, and it happens to be the Italian Shenanigans Day. So nice. Lorenzo, welcome. Welcome to the stream. Everybody welcome Lorenzo. I'm always happy when somebody logs in for the first time and is on the stream for the first time. That's awesome. Welcome. Legit, have you ever been embarrassed? If so, what? Oh gosh, yes I have. The thing is with me, if I have to remember something on the spot, I usually forget it. If that makes sense. Please remind me for Monday, because I will not remember them. But I have had a few moments that I'm trying to remember, and I can't right now. So I will let you know on, please remind me again on Monday, Timon. Timon, sorry, Timon. I know you hate that. If you watch the past videos, learn some of the books about Italian centaurs. Welcome. Wow, that's embarrassing. You are memory. Your English is embarrassing. Learn to spell. Oh, what? I'm just trying to remember. Oh, anyways. Most embarrassing memory. I just can't remember. I'm not very often embarrassed. I just am not very often embarrassed. Because embarrassment, embarrassment usually comes when people feel they, like, I did something embarrassing, but more embarrassing up to somebody else's standard. I shouldn't do this, and I did it. And I don't have that ever. I have embarrassment when it's not up to my standards. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh gosh, that was embarrassing. That just was not, like, I didn't like how I felt about myself in that moment. That's the kind of embarrassment I feel. Wash hands. Thanks, Doc. Wash hands. Bruno, I found a penguin on the beach today and remembered you're a crow. Couldn't save him. Oh no, Bruno, a penguin? Wait, where are you tuning in from? First of all, where are you tuning in from? Second of all, a penguin? A penguin on the beach? Third of all, was it alive at the time? And fourth, I'm sorry, that's really sad. What about that in the first book when Harry met the centaurs in the forest with the unicorn? Yeah, those guys, the centaurs, were Italian in different kinds of ways. What kind of skiving snack box sweet would you want to invent? I would invent something that, expands your head like a balloon and you just float around. You can float around where you want to for a while and you float back down. I'll call it a balloon buster. I'm tuning in from Hong Kong. Whoa, cool. South of Brazil. Penguins in south of Brazil? Bruno, gets really cold in the winter. Sometimes they get lost. No way. Whoa. That's cool. So do you have like penguin friends? What a dumb question. Of course you do. Okay, everybody. I think I'm gonna log off. I hope you have a really wonderful weekend. This is fun. We're about, oh man, we're maybe a quarter away through. And the thing is, the midpoint of the books is somewhere, of all the books, is halfway through this book. So I cannot believe we have not even got halfway. It's kind of mind-blowing to me. We haven't even got halfway. And we've been at this for a while. So this is pretty cool. The Marge special. That's what happens to Harry's aunt in book 3. Oh yeah, that's true. She does flow up and blow away, but more like you can control it. Are we at chapter 13 yet? This is chapter 13. So actually, we've hit the halfway point. Yo, that's cool. We hit halfway, everybody. Whoa, crazy. Okay. Is it what you expected? The halfway point? Everything and that and more. John, this was the halfway point today. Yeah, this is so crazy. Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for everybody who stuck by me. I had some really low points and you encouraged me, you pushed me through those. And I couldn't have done this without my family. Thank you very much to my family. Thanks to God. Thank you. Thank you to my coach, the old guy who trained me in boxing when I thought I couldn't go on anymore. Thank you for that. And I just want to say to everybody graduating from high school, open up and lean in. Open up and lean in all throughout your life. Just do that, okay? Oh man. Thank you. Do I exit here or do I exit there? Which way do I go? Happy halfway, everybody. Happy halfway. This is awesome. It's an unexpected celebration. We did it, everybody. Got halfway. It's awesome. Okay. You all have a wonderful weekend. You have purpose. You have value. And you are loved. I know I mix up sometimes the meaning of value and purpose, but I mean every single one of those. Don't forget that for the weekend. Pass it on. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope you do something fun and see somebody. I mean, the books in general, what do you expect? What impression do you have of the Harry Potter books? I have a great impression. I was more, my impression going in was like, I've heard that they're kids' books that get more adult as it goes. That's very true. But, I didn't expect the level of writing. She's just an amazing level of writing that she has. And the kind of character descriptions, it's just phenomenal. I really love it. Phenomenal series, phenomenal writing. Yeah. Okay. Oh, gosh. A little burp on again. See you all on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.